Welcome back to From the Couch Sports. My name's Connor. I'm your host. Today I want to get into the New York Jets offseason. And so far this has been it's been a roller coaster as a Jets fan. I know Monday midday us Jets fans were losing our minds, calling for Joe Douglas to get fired. I saw that all over Twitter and all over Facebook if you're in any of these fan groups. And the funny thing is at this point I'm recording this on Thursday. It's about 10:30 Mountain Time. At this point, he has made some pretty solid moves overall. I think the offseason's looking pretty decent. Obviously, there's still the splash moves have yet to be had. But shoring up the offensive line was the number one priority in this offseason. And we're looking at it as a possibly going into the draft where this isn't going to be a desperate need for us like we were looking at just a week ago. So just to kick things off, we had Monday. They opened up in the morning. They re-signed Greg Zuerlein, our kicker, 2-year, $8.4 million deal. I thought this was a great move. He was incredible last year. And really, like anybody who's followed the Jets for some time, they know like the struggle that we have had at kicker. We went through years where we were losing games because of our kicker. And finally, these last couple seasons with Greg Zuerlein, that's kind of not been an issue. So I'm happy to get him tied in. I think yesterday around 2 p.m., we ended up re-signing Thomas Morstead, our punter. He had an incredible season as well. He had to punt the ball way too much this last season with Zach Wilson playing quarterback. So hopefully that changes and we don't need to rely on him as much. But special teams, I think, is something that a lot of teams overlook. And in the end, you win games with your kicker, you win games with field position, and these are all things that are very crucial for our unit. We had a couple other small moves that happened right before free agency. So the free agency kind of opens up on Monday, like players are allowed to talk to other teams, and then Wednesday is official when they can officially sign their contracts. And so I think this was towards the tail end of last week. We re-signed Chuck Clark to a 1-year deal. He was a big move I really liked last year. I believe we traded like a 6th-round pick for him from the Ravens. And he was set to be our starting safety, and then he ended up tearing his ACL in OTAs. So I'm really hoping he kind of returns to what he was pre-injury because I think he'd be a great fit. And before the ACL tear, from everything I've seen, he was a really healthy player. He played quite often. So I do like that move. We are still going to probably lose Ashton Davis. A lot of the reports are saying that he's looking for a gig where he can start somewhere. And so if that happens, we're probably going to need to sign one other safety, whether it be in free agency or the draft. And then, so Monday was kind of, like I said, a roller coaster for us Jets fans. We went through ups and downs. Lots of Jets fans were calling for Joe Douglas's head when they didn't see any moves right away. And he kind of ended the day with 3 pretty decent signings. He started off John Simpson, the left guard from the Ravens. He brought him in on a 2-year, $18 million deal. From reports I've read, this is really more like a 2-year, $12 million deal, about $6 million a year, with incentives that cap out at $18 million. So when you're looking at the cap savings that we got for cutting Laken Tomlinson, I think it was right about $8 million. So he fits right in that savings. You're getting a starting left guard. And as far as I know, some Jets fans were kind of mixed on the move. I've seen a lot of stuff that, in my opinion, looks good. Chris Long had an excerpt from, I think, one of his podcasts where he had some pretty high stuff to say about John Simpson. Great in the run game. I think last year he only gave up a couple sacks in comparison to Laken Tomlinson, who gave up quite a few. And there's a few things that factor into a lineman giving up sacks, and a lot of it is your quarterback holding on to the ball. As great as Lamar Jackson is, he does hold on to the ball pretty long into the snap. Aaron Rodgers shouldn't have that issue, so I think John Simpson comes in, he plugs in that left guard spot, fills the hole that's left from Laken Tomlinson, and then we also ended up signing Tyrod Taylor to 2 year. I think it's about $9 million per season, which is kind of on the upper end of a backup quarterback pay. But what we saw last year, it's like that's what we need. You need a backup quarterback who can come in and play 500 football when your starter's down. And who knows how many games Rodgers is going to play coming off of an Achilles tear. And so if we need Tyrod to come in and play a few games, I think he is good enough quarterback to win a couple of those games. If he was on our team last year, we probably would have been a wild card team, in my opinion. And then we also signed Javon Kinlaw. He kind of had a resurgence year for the 49ers this last season. He wasn't great before that. He dealt with a lot of injuries and things like that. But I believe he was actually drafted in Salah's last year with the 49ers. So they've really shown this defensive staff, as many knocks as we have on Salah, the one thing is they are incredible at developing players on the defensive side of the football. You can look, I know Bryce Huff is, it's a sore subject right now, but we drafted, undrafted free agent, developed him into a 10 sack a year guy. You can look, Solomon Thomas had a great, probably a career year last year, and he was kind of like a guy that most people were saying was a bust after being, I think he was the 3rd overall pick for the Niners years back. The Quincy Williams development, all over this defense, there's players that are just, blossoming into in this unit. So I know a lot of people aren't great fans of the amount of money that we're paying Kinlaw, but I think there's potential there for him to come in and develop and be a great player for us. And we also, I might be butchering this name, so my apologies, but we signed a nose tackle from the Cardinals, Liki Fotu. And so these two defensive tackle signings kind of shore up the inside. I wouldn't rule out maybe still bringing back Solomon Thomas. Quinton Jefferson has officially left. Al Woods is, I think he was 36, 37, and he also tore his Achilles, so I wouldn't expect him to be back either. So these two defensive tackles kind of fill those holes that are left to play alongside Quinton Williams. And then the one other move we made on the defensive side of the ball, this is kind of Bryce Hall's replacement, is Isaiah Oliver. He's got some time with Jeff Ulbrich when he was the coach on the Falcons. And so he's going to be kind of like a depth corner. So I'm really liking that unit. We still obviously have arguably the best corner in football in Sauce Gardner. DJ Reed, I think among Jets fans, most of us think he's a top 10 corner. Michael Carter, arguably the best nickel corner in football. So Brandon Echols, I think, is a good depth piece. And then now you add Isaiah Oliver, who kind of provides some extra stuff on the special teams unit. So defensively, we might still have a couple holes that we need to address, notably at safety. But that's pretty much it. Our defense is coming back. Almost all the players are coming back. Just this morning, we restructured C.J. Mosley's contract, extending him an extra year. And also, I believe it saved like $12 million on the salary cap. I could be wrong. It's somewhere in that. It's over $10 million. So that's big time. That's going to open up potential big move. I know a lot of people were talking yesterday like we're running out of cap space. There's not many big moves that can be happen. But now that we restructured C.J. Mosley, I think there's room for that big time left tackle, big time receiver. Maybe one or the other. There's a few other moves that could happen. Restructuring John Franklin Myers, that could open up some cap space. Extending DJ Reed, I know that's another thing a lot of Jets fans want. Even Tyler Conklin. Those few moves that we could make in-house, those would open up some cap space for us this season. And so right now, so the other big move we made, this was yesterday. We traded for Morgan Moses, a right tackle that played for us. He was solid when he was on the Jets. And this was basically a 4th-round pick swap, and then we gave them a 6th-round pick to the Ravens. In his last 2 seasons, he was incredible. So I think right now The way our offensive line looks is we need a left tackle, but we got John Simpson penciled in at left guard, Joe Tippmann at center, Elijah Vera Tucker right guard, Morgan Moses right tackle. So overall offensive line on paper, once we make a swing at left tackle, I really like the unit that we've got going. Obviously, I know some people like Damian Woody is a big fan of Carter Warren, second year kind of development player. He should be a good kind of depth piece on the O line. I'd like to bring back Connor McGovern. He can play all three interior positions, so he provides some really good depth there as well. And then, the rest of the offseason. So I'm going to go through kind of what I think are our biggest needs. Is going to be left tackle, wide receiver 2, and wide receiver 3. And then beyond that, obviously bringing in a safety, I think is another piece. But left tackle, I see kind of 2 avenues that we can go, or maybe 3 avenues. We're looking at either paying Tyron Smith a ton of money. I think he's coming off either All-Pro or second-team All-Pro this last season. I know some people are concerned with his injuries, but, he seems to average about 13 games a season. He's always played every time he's made the playoffs. So he comes in and he's healthy at the right time, whether that's, 18 games that we need him for, or if it's only 13, 14. But I think that's enough. So it's really him. And then the other option, which I would not be surprised just because there's the ties to Aaron Rodgers, is bringing in David Bakhtiari. I think the rumor has it is that he's fully healthy. It looked like he had a misdiagnosed knee injury. This has kind of set him back like 3 seasons, essentially. I think he played like 12 in between in 2021 or 2022. But besides that, he's been out entire years with the knee injuries. But the rumor has it that he's fully healthy. He should be good to go. So you probably save some money for signing Bakhtiari instead of Tyron Smith. The upside is actually very similar. Regardless, if either one of these guys are healthy, you have a potential All-Pro left tackle. If you do go David Bakhtiari, I think bringing in a depth left tackle, a Josh Jones, Kelvin Beachum, someone like that would be good. Just in case David Bakhtiari gets hurt, then we've got another guy who can slide into that left tackle spot and perform for us. And then I guess the other option. So we're sitting at the 10th overall pick, and with that 10th pick, I think everybody has thought we were going tackle. The Morgan Moses move kind of solidifies our right tackle position, so I don't think that's as necessary. So you could still go tackle even if you get one of these guys, but that rookie left tackle is probably going to end up being more of a depth piece. And we're kind of in a year where we need to push all the chips to the table and win it all. These couple of seasons that you get Aaron Rodgers for, you really need to put everything into the table, try to get wins, not just make the playoffs. I think a lot of Jets fans would just be content with making the playoffs for the first time since 2010. But in my opinion, you want to see success in the playoffs. You want to go deep. You want to contend for a Super Bowl. And so that gives us some flexibility as far as the 10th overall position if we do sign a Tyron Smith or a David Bakhtiari. And then the other big move is, I would say, 2 more wide receivers we need. Right now, Garrett Wilson is incredible, but, let's say he misses a game. What are we looking at receiver? You got Allen Lazard, Xavier Gibson, Jason Brownlee. So we absolutely need more help at receiver. And looking at free agency, there's a few names left that I think would be solid fits. Mike Williams just got let go from the Chargers yesterday. I think he'd be a great fit for us. He gives you a big body, kind of jump ball, 50-50 ball guy on the opposite side of Garrett Wilson. And then there's a few other guys that I wouldn't be disappointed in. Tyler Boyd, he's one of the better slot receivers in football. Curtis Samuel, he's also a guy who, once he gets the ball in his hands, he can make great plays. So couple of those guys I think would be good fits. I would not be surprised if we made a run at Odell, just because we were tied to him last offseason. He wouldn't be I wouldn't be super ecstatic with that pick up. I think if you have another like solid number two guy and then Odell, he's your number three, I think that's reasonable. But if Odell's your big pickup as your wide receiver number two, I'm not a big fan of that. And then another name that got cut that I do like is Hunter Renfrow. He could be one of the better slot receivers in football. And then a piece that's more of a depth kick returner guy I like is Jamal Agnew from the Jags. So as far as free agency, that's pretty much it. I could see us taking a flyer on Hollywood Brown. He does have that deep speed, one of the better deep threats in football, but he's also seemingly constantly injured. So that one kind of in the same Odell ballpark with that. I wouldn't be super excited, but it's still a move. You're getting the receiver that's better than what we have, so I wouldn't be super disappointed in it either. And then, so besides that, you got some trade options. I know a lot of Jets fans are tying Cortland Sutton. I think that would be an incredible move for us. He also gives you, probably a better jump ball guy, bigger body receiver on the outside. T. Higgins, I think, is kind of a long shot, just depending on, he's going to draw a contract upwards of $20 million a year, and probably, a second round pick at least for 2025. And I'm not opposed to getting rid of future draft picks or even draft picks this year if it means you're bringing in a playmaker. But I'm not sure if that's something that the Jets are going to ultimately do. It seems like they're always involved in these big trades, but they're not pulling the trigger. They're not, giving up the assets that they need to make those things happen. And then there's a couple other names that I think aren't super realistic. Everything the Raiders are saying is that they're keeping Devontae Adams. I still wouldn't be surprised if he leaves. They have a huge question mark at quarterback. They just brought in Gardner Minshew, but like comparing playing with Minshew or playing with Aaron Rodgers, it's kind of a no-brainer if you're Devontae Adams. So I would say that's kind of a dark horse move. Brandon Ayuk is another one. He's a guy that's due to get paid. So he'd be another guy you'd probably have to give up a pretty high draft pick and pay him. But he'd be a great weapon alongside Garrett Wilson as well. I've seen Jets fans talking about Justin Jefferson. I would be very surprised if the Vikings trade him. And if they do, I don't know if it's to the Jets. They're probably going to ask for 1 or 2 first-round picks back at least. And obviously, I think it's worth it, but you're also going to have to pay him probably $30 million a year. He's going to be in the highest paid receiver in the league type of guy. And so that I don't really buy into that happening for the Jets. The other player that kind of under the radar, Michael Gallup. I could see a trade for Michael Gallup. He probably wouldn't cost that much. I don't know if he's really the ideal fit for that number 2 spot, but he's certainly an upgrade over Lazard, so I wouldn't be super upset over it. And then so that covers kind of free agency and our trade options. And then in the draft, if we're sitting at 10, there's a couple options depending on how the board shakes out. Malik Neighbors is an electric wide receiver coming out of LSU. He might be a guy you have to trade up to get. I know a lot of people are tying him to the Giants at 6. And then Rome Odunze, he is another guy that's probably more realistic at 10. The other thing is the Bears are sitting at 9, and they might draft a receiver as well. So that's kind of up in the air. I know another fit, he's not a receiver, but ultimately he provides a ton in the receiving game. He's a good blocker. It would be Brock Bowers. I know some Jets fans are split on possibly making that move at 10, but I would not be upset drafting a franchise tight end. So I do like that potential move. And then a couple other things we kind of need to do. We need to get rid of Zach Wilson. We need to trade him to wherever we need to. We might need to give up a pick to have a team eat his salary cap, but ultimately we need to find another spot for him out instead of outright cutting him. I think we lose like 11 million in caps in dead cap if we do cut him, and then with him leaving, that does kind of open up. What I would like to see is drafting in the mid rounds a developmental quarterback that can sit behind Tyrod Taylor, can sit behind Aaron Rodgers. Tyrod Taylor has gotten injured a lot when he's played a lot. If he has to play 6 games, for example, you don't know how healthy he's going to be. So having a third QB that you can develop over time, I think would be smart. There's a few names. Some of them might not be available when we're picking in the 3rd or even the 4th round. Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr. I like both of those guys. And then a few pieces that I think are more realistic would be a Spencer Rattler, a Joe Milton, or a Jordan Travis. I think Jordan Travis would be in the later rounds because he's coming off a pretty bad injury. But I do like Joe Milton, Spencer Rattler. They both have huge arms. So learning behind Aaron Rodgers for a couple seasons could be really good for them. They could potentially turn into something here in a couple years, kind of how Jordan Love did. And that kind of covers what I want to see. Another name that I would not be surprised if he's either cut or traded, just because this is coming off of the Titans signing Calvin Ridley to a massive contract, would be DeAndre Hopkins. So DeAndre Hopkins, I think, had a great year last year. I think he broke 1,000 yards playing with Tannehill and Will Levis. So if you bring him in as your number 2 receiver, he'd be one of your best receivers that we've ever had. Borderline Hall of Fame receiver. He's a guy that hasn't really played with someone on the caliber of an Aaron Rodgers. So I know he's up there in age, but with his skill set, he doesn't really rely on, his freak athleticism or anything. He's incredible hands, good route runner. He'd be a great fit if we were able to pick him up. I really wanted to target him last offseason, and it just didn't seem like it was something the Jets were really super interested on. And then another name, I know some Jets fans are thinking Corey Davis might return from retirement. I think bringing him back would be nice as well, just depending on what we're looking at paying him and against the cap and everything. But overall, I'm excited for this next upcoming season. We haven't been a lot of times like we win the off season. We have the best free agency class. We get really excited about the draft class, and then we fall apart in the season. So I'm not judging everything free agency wise on did we win the off season. Obviously, you see the Eagles. They've had a great offseason. The Commanders, the Titans, those teams have gone out, signed a ton of guys, got a bunch of starters, and we've really solidified the offensive line. We're still missing a couple pieces there, and then at receiver, we need to make some moves. But one thing that will be kind of disappointing, and it seems like this might happen, is a lot of these receiver names are kind of falling off the board, and we need to make a move before that happens, or we're going to be stuck having to trade up and draft a receiver. In my ideal situation is you get a left tackle, whether it's Tyron Smith or David Bakhtiari, you get a wide receiver, a solid number 2 receiver, and then that leaves you flexibility in the draft. So you can go best player available. You can go a tackle, you can go a receiver, or you can go Brock Bowers. So that's what I'd like to see. Let me know what your thoughts are. If there's any players I missed that you'd like us to target, in whether free agency or trades or the draft. But as always, thanks for tuning in. If you like the content, like and subscribe to the video. It means a lot. And thank you. Bye.